Hello once again, Internet. Who is ready for another long, painful, rambling paracord tutorial? Good, me neither. Let's go ahead and get right into this. This is a belt pouch I made for my Leatherman Wave multi-tool. I didn't particularly like the pouch that came with this tool. It rides a bit higher on the belt than I would like, and this belt loop is so large that it slides around, it moves around too easily. And so by making this pouch right here, I think I managed to solve both problems, and that the belt loops on the back are high. They loop over and come back around and tie into the knots on the back here. And notice we have dual belt loops here, and the idea here is the belt loop on your waist goes in between them, effectively locking this in place, keeping it from sliding around, so it's always in the same place on your belt. It's never going anywhere. And it carries the Leatherman Wave nice and low on the belt. A while after I made the pouch, I had the idea to add on this sort of basket weave tube or sleeve on the side to function as a flashlight holster. This is my ThruNite TN12, one of my very, very favorite everyday carry flashlights. It is a bit on the large side though, so much so that it's not super uncomfortable to carry in the pocket, but it's kind of clunky, it's kind of awkward, and it does ride high in the pocket because of the clip placement, and you have a good 1.25 inches of the flashlight sticking out of your pocket. So I thought, well, why don't I just put it on the side of my multi-tool pouch, like so, and it clips onto the sleeve that I added on the side. None of the controls for the flashlight are covered. You can still reach the tail switch and the E switch. Neither of those are covered by the holster. And this is essentially just a modified version of the Cobra Trail Paracord bracelet, like this one right here. I'll hold these side by side, you can see the similarity. So this is essentially this, just longer, and then of course folded in half to wrap around the multi-tool. And after being folded in half, I closed up the sides with 2 more sets of Cobra knots. And then the flashlight holster, which I forgot to mention earlier, is made with gutted cord, so it can be thin and flat, just ties into the tops of the Cobra knots on the side. So there's actually 3 sets of Cobra knots in this one, 2 and 3. Alright, and to make this, we are going to need 3 13-foot long pieces of cord for starters, and that's probably more than is necessary, but I would rather have more than enough than not enough. So you can see I have 2 pieces of olive drab and 1 piece in ACU digital camo, and those are going to make our main core and working strand here, and then the ACU is going to be our accent in the center, the first set of Cobra knots. And then I also have 2 more pieces of ACU. These are each about 6 feet long, which again is probably more than what is needed, and those are going to make up the sidewalls once the main part of this, or the would have been bracelet part of this, is finished. Alright, without further delay, let's get started. Okay, so to start this off, I have my 2 long pieces of olive drab cord, my 2 13-foot sections, and I have them centered. So on this lower one here, I have about 6.5 feet over here, and 6.5 on the right. And this top one is the same, about 6.5. 6.5. What I'm going to do is take this top strand and tie it to this lower one with a simple, basic cow hitch knot. So I'm going to take this, make a loop, wrap around to the back, and then I want to pull these two strands down through the loop. Pull all of the cord through. Make this good and tight. Just like that. Okay. And now I want to make these two strands from my cow hitch knot into two loops of identical length on either side of the cow hitch knot. And how we are going to do that is we're going to just eyeball it for now. We'll worry about the precise exact length of these in a little bit, but for now, let's just eyeball it and say make about an 8-inch long loop with this right strand, like so. And I want this right strand to go over the top of this top strand here. So that's on top of that. That looks just a little bit too short, so I'm going to give that some more slack. And now I want to tie this strand on top here into another cow hitch knot right next to this one. So we will just loop this around the top strand, around the back, and bring it up through the loop we just made. And now we will take that same strand, go around behind our top strand, pull all of our slack through. And you can see that made another loop here, so now we want this strand to go through here. Tighten it all down. And maybe not make that super tight just yet, because again we might have to adjust the length of this loop. And now we want to do the same thing with the other strand on this side. And again, whoops, again if it's not exactly the same length as this loop, it's not a huge deal, we'll fix that in just a minute. Not a literal minute, but you know what I mean. So we'll just kind of eyeball it and say for now it's about the same length as this loop. And once again, we are going to go over our top strand, back through the new loop we just made. I'll go around over the top of that loop. Underneath our top strand, back up and around and down through this loop right here. Pull it all through, pull it tight, maybe not super tight because again we may have to adjust the length here. But that is going to complete the basic core that will serve as the platform for our Cobra trail pattern. It'll be almost like we're making the Cobra trail bracelet, but just longer than normal, so it's long enough that it can wrap almost completely around the Leatherman Wave multi-tool. Okay, it was getting harder and harder to keep everything in frame, so I positioned the camera much higher so you're looking basically straight down at the desk. I have, whoops, two clipboards overlapping, and I know from having made a couple of these pouches that the length of our core needs to be just shy of the distance between the two clips by about an inch. let's take a look at our length here. If I hold our cow hitch knots up against the top clip, we can see how that's just shy. It doesn't go quite all the way across. And I want there to be about an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter of space there. So this side might actually be a little bit too long. So I'm going to fix that by pulling some of the slack through the cow hitch knot we just made. And tightening that down again. Now I'm going to tie it good and tight so it stays securely in place. Okay, and that looks to be about where I want it. And now we're going to do the same thing with our other loop on the left side. I want to make sure it's the same length as this one on the right, which is easier said than done. Making the length of the two exactly the same can be somewhat difficult, but practice makes perfect, right? All right. Tighten up the cow hitch knot. And it looks like this one is still a little bit too short. Okay, so now I have two loops of the same length. These will be the 4 center strands for our core, and then these 2 loose strands on either side of that, as I smack the tripod around, will be our outer strands of our 6-strand core. And this strand that they are all tied to is going to be our working strand that eventually makes the alternating cow hitch knots that form the sides of our pouch. Okay, so now I have my strands secured underneath the clips, both top and bottom. And you can see one more addition I've made is these yellow strands here that are just keeping tension on the loops we made, just to keep those pulled tight and there's no slack in them as we are weaving. And now with everything set up and ready to go, I want to actually measure how long these loops are, starting from the cow hitch knots up here all the way to the end. It'll be easier if I do it this way. And we are looking at right at 8 1/4 inches. And in metric that is going to be right at 31 centimeters. And again, that's to wrap around the Leatherman Wave multi-tool. This length obviously will vary if you're using a larger or smaller multi-tool. But for the Leatherman Wave, we're looking at 8 1/4 inches. Whoops. Or 31 centimeters. And with that, I believe we are ready to start weaving. Okay, so again, this is going to be very much like weaving the Cobra Trail bracelet, just longer than normal. You can see we have our Cobra knots in the center, and the cow hitch knots on either side actually pass through that and sort of interlock with it. And for our set of Cobra knots in the center, I have my piece of ACU camouflage cord. Again, evenly spaced. This is the center point right here. I have about 6.5 feet that pass underneath our 2 center core strands, and then 6.5 feet that pass over the top here. We're just going to lay that on there like that, and tie your basic Cobra knot. And if you have any experience with Paracord, you probably already know how to tie a basic Cobra knot. But and you'll notice I'm not pulling that super tight just yet, because now our working strand on the right has to go down through the Cobra knot and back out to the right underneath these right 2 strands. You know what, let me pull out a little bit more slack so you can see this a little bit better. Okay, this goes down through the Cobra knot, back out to the right underneath our core strands, and up through the new loop we just made. And now let's tighten that all as best as we can, push everything up toward our cow hitch knots at the top of the core. Tighten this down, and let's make our Cobra knot good and tight. Let me zoom in on that so you can see that better. Just like that. So make sure I still have good tension on all my core strands. Alright, and now we want to make this basically a complete cow hitch knot. And how we're going to do that is we're going to take this strand that we just pulled up through the loop. That's going to go back underneath the core strands. Back out once again to the right through the loop. And tighten it down. Okay, and now we are going to do essentially the same thing on the left side. We're going to continue our Cobra knot. Just like so. Whoops. And careful not to twist your core strands like I just did. And now, on the left side, the lower part of the cow hitch knot is going to come up through the Cobra loop, so we are not going to pass this first strand through the top of it like we did on the right side. We're just going to pass this right underneath our left 2 core strands. Come back out through the left side and up through this loop we just made by doing that. And pull it tight. Push it up there, make sure it's as far up as it can go. And now we're going to finish the cow hitch knot, and being on the left side, this is going to go underneath these 2 strands again and come up through the Cobra knot instead of going down through the Cobra knot like we did on the right side. Doing this and staying on camera is more difficult than you might think. So I'll just push that through where you can see it. Well, maybe you can see that. Pull that strand up through the Cobra knot, and then take that strand back through this loop we just made. And just like on the right side, we'll push everything up as high as it will go. Tighten it all down. And that is essentially going to be the pattern. You just keep repeating the Cobra knot, passing the top part of our cow hitch knot on the right through the Cobra knot, and the lower part of the cow hitch knot on the left through the Cobra knot. So let's go through that again, but let's do it a little bit faster this time. Okay, we will continue the Cobra knot. Make a cow hitch knot on the right side, make over the top of our two outermost core strands through the Cobra knot. Back out to the right through the loop. Tighten that down. Tighten our Cobra knot. And finish the cow hitch knot on the right side by now going underneath the strands and back out through the loop we just made by doing that. Tighten it down. Alright, and on the left, we will continue the Cobra knot. Instead of going down through the Cobra knot, we are going to start the cow hitch knot, making a loop around our core strands with our working strand. Pull it tight. And now we will go underneath our core strands. Up through the Cobra knot. Back out to the left side through the loop we just made. And tighten everything down as best as we can. And that is basically the pattern. We're just going to keep repeating that until we get to the ends of our loops down here, where we'll close off the design. And then essentially just fold the whole thing in half and close up the sides with two more sets of Cobra knots. So through the magic of editing, lucky for you, you're going to jump right to the end as I'm finishing off this part, right here at the ends of the loops. For me, it's going to take a while. I've got a good bit of weaving to do. Okay, and I am now finished with said good bit of weaving. My core is almost completely full. I'm down here at the very end for the very very last knot. And there's a little bit of a trick to this. This Cobra strand that has been zigzagging across the tops of our core strands and just been staying on top the whole time is going to need to come out through the bottom like our other Cobra strand on the right does. And how exactly we're going to do that is we're going to take this back through here, like so. I'm going to go down through the loop on the core strand, and we're not going to pull that tight just yet. First, we need to bring the other side of our cow hitch knot up through the Cobra knot, just like we've been doing the whole time. So it comes up and through, out through the loop, and we will just pull that tight, like so. And once we've done that, we can pull that Cobra strand down so that it comes out on the bottom the same as on the right side. And while I'm here, I want to tighten down that last cow hitch knot as best as I can. Oops. Knocking my lighter off the desk. And there we have our completed platform for the whole thing, again based off of the Cobra Trail bracelet. If I put those side by side, you can see how they're essentially the same thing. And now, the only strands that we are going to cut and melt in place right here are these two working ends on the side. These four on the inside, do not trim these yet. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can see this better. Do not cut and melt these four cords here. Leave these just like they are, because those are eventually going to become our belt loops. For now, let's just trim these two outer working strands, like so. I'll melt that down, smooth it out. May have cut that just a little bit too long. I'll fix that in just a minute. In the meantime, let's go around to this other side. Cut that a little bit closer than we did the other one. I think my lighter's running out of fuel. Oops, maybe not. All right. Smooth that out. Just like so. All right, and I think I'm going to cut this one a little bit shorter and melt that in place a little bit better, and then we'll move on to the next step. And that next step is going to be to weave our belt loops like you see here. Now, on my pouches, I pass the core and accent strands that will eventually make our belt loops through the top of the sixth set of cow hitch knots. And this will vary depending on how wide the belt is that you plan to wear the pouch on. So if you had a wider belt, you probably want to go down to the seventh or eighth cow hitch knot over here. But for me, I find the top of the sixth one is the way to go. So first, let's take our outside strand on the right, count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. right there, I want to go underneath that. The in-between edits, I put the fids on the ends here. Well, might have to get the knotting tool to do this too. Nope, got it. Alright. So our outside strand is going to go up and over the top of the cow hitch knot. This will be a little bit easier to see if I zoom back a little bit. And we're just going to tighten that down until it's straight, but don't make it so tight that it's trying to fold the end back over like this. Make it tight enough, but not too tight. And now we're going to take our accent strand, and this is not going to go around and back through like the outside strand here did. This is going to go under this way. So get the end of the fid underneath there, as I try not to stab myself with my own fid, that would hurt. Alright, and if I keep it centered, maybe you could see what I'm doing. Just like that. And from there, we are going to yet again just tie a simple Cobra knot, as you can see here. And we'll just keep doing that until we get up to the top here, until we run out of room. So now I'm going to take this outside strand, come over the tops of both of those strands, and our inside strand goes around that top strand, or that outside strand, excuse me, goes underneath and comes back up through the loop. And then we tighten it down, pull it really good and tight. We don't want these loops to be too wide. The way I tie these, this is fairly narrow for a Cobra knot. We'll try to keep it that way for this. And now we'll just go back over the top with our olive drab strand again. Over the top. And then our ACU strand goes around the olive drab strand, underneath both of these strands, and comes back up through the loop. And then pull everything nice and tight. Just like that. So now let me zoom back in so you can see that a little bit better. Oops. Let's do that one more time. Back over both strands, the olive drab, around the olive drab strand and underneath. Two strands with our ACU. Back up through the loop. Pull everything nice and tight as I get it off center and out of frame. And just keep doing that until you run out of room up here. Okay, and you can see now I've used up all the room that I had to tie this set of Cobra knots, and I've cut and melted those two strands in place. And now we have to make another loop on this side that's basically mirrored to this one. So again, we need to take our outside strand. There's a banging the fids against the tripod. Take our outside strand, and again we'll go through the top of the sixth set of cow hitch knots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we will go over and back through. And again, remember not to make it too tight. And I just realized I pulled that through to the wrong side. Let's take that back this way. And then our accent strand, our ACU strand, will go underneath. And back this way again, back toward me. And we'll just tie this in the mirror image of the first loop we already made. So, again, our olive drab strand comes up and over these two strands here. The ACU will go around the olive drab strand, underneath these two strands, and back up through the loop. And we'll pull everything nice and tight. Again, the olive drab strand stays on top and goes over the top two, or the top of the two center strands. Our ACU goes around the olive drab, underneath the two center strands, back up through the loop, and pull everything tight again. While I manage to not keep it on camera as I'm doing this. And once again, just keep doing that until you run out of room here at the top. Okay, and as you can see, I once again just kept weaving until I ran out of room. Cut and melted everything in place, and we now have our complete dual belt loops. That again, when worn over one of the belt loops on your waistline, these will keep the pouch from sliding around. And now we can kind of start to see the pouch forming. This is going to fold around the multi-tool and enclose it like so. And to get it to do that, we now have to weave the sidewalls, which is, well, tricky. It's easier said than done, but I'll see if I can properly demonstrate this on camera. I make no guarantees. Alright. Now, to make the sidewalls for the pouch, I have one of my 6-foot long pieces of ACU. Got fids on both ends. And what we are going to do now is we are going to center our pouch, make sure the ends are even. And now we are going to pass the fids through these two knots here, like so. One there, one there. Pull all of that cord through. Oops. And now those are going to pass through the loop we just made. Whoops. Like so. Pull both strands back through that. And just pull it tight, making yet another new cow hitch knot. Just like so. And once we've done that, let me zoom out a little bit. So we have our cow hitch knot tied on and properly tightened, which I apparently haven't done yet. Oh well. We are going to start Yet another new set of Cobra knots. Imagine that, as if we haven't tied enough of those already. And now we're going to take our front strand, this being the front of the pouch here. So this being the strand closest to the front. We're going to take that, turn it back on itself, like so, and make that about even with the top of the pouch here. You see on the finished pouch here, top of the Cobra knots is even with the top of the actual pouch itself. So this might take some fine-tuning, some tightening and loosening to make it even with the top. Take your time, pause the video if you need to. So we're going to bring our left strand up and around underneath. Whoops. And up through this loop here. And just pull everything nice and tight. And again, I want to check that and make sure it's about even with the top of the pouch, which it looks like it is. I find the easiest way to do this, to make sure this is all properly spaced, is to actually take the Leatherman, hold the pouch together around it, and now normally when tying a Cobra knot you would continuously tie, well, both strands. You would make one turn, you would make one loop with your top strand, then loop around and underneath it with your lower strand. I find to hold everything in place it's actually a little bit easier to go with just the top strand to make the sidewall here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this top strand here and pass it through this loop right here, but from the outside going this way. Which might be easier said than done. I'm going to set the Leatherman down for just a second while I do this. Alright, I'll pull that too. Alright. And now we're going to do the same thing with the loop on this side. We're going to go around this way from the outside. Pull it tight so that everything, so that everything keeps its shape. But obviously you don't want to pull it too tight so that the walls of the pouch are being pulled in like so, or it'll fit the tool a little bit too tightly. Alright, coming back from the outside. Just like so, and we'll keep going back and forth like that, essentially in a zigzag pattern, until we run out of room. We run out of knots to loop through down here. Alright, and as you can see, I've just kept going back and forth through the tops of the, or the outside, I should say, of the cow hitch knots until I've run out of room at the bottom. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the tool out now. And now with our other strand we will begin tying just regular Cobra knots. I'm going to go over 2 strands. Oops, being careful I don't twist the cord. And this is the tricky part. It gets harder and harder to reach in here with the fid the further and further down you work, but it can be done. I've done it 2 or 3 times already, so I would know. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this knot here a little bit before I go around the back and come up. Back over these 2 strands right here. Down, through, whoops. There I go, getting it all twisted again. That's better. Okay. And again, I'll come back from this side and open up that knot a little bit before I go around to the back. Come out through the Cobra knots, or what will become the Cobra knots as we go further and further along. Back over. And just keep repeating that pattern again until you run out of room at the bottom. Let's go through that a couple more times just to be safe. Go over the 2 strands. Back through to the back again. There. How difficult is that to follow? Probably extremely with me being the one demonstrating it. Open up this knot again. Bring the fid and all that cord back through again. Alright, and just keep doing that until you run out of room. Whoops, if I did this on camera, you could tell what I was talking about, huh? Just keep repeating that pattern until you run out of room here at the bottom, where we will finish the Cobra knot in a neat and orderly fashion. It's kind of tricky to do, but I'll walk you through it as best as I can once I get there. Alright, now we've worked our way down to the bottom of the pouch. Actually finishing off this side wall is going to be a little bit tricky. Just like following anything I've said or shown in this video. I'll show you this as best as I can. So we have our bottom strand here. Or that is the strand that makes up the back of the sidewall. And you see how that's always passed over 2 strands with each individual loop, and that's going to be the same here. Except the second strand that it passes over is actually going to be the cow hitch knot here on the end. So I'm actually going to put that through the cow hitch knot. Like so. And then finally, our top strand is just going to pass through this gap here, not through the cow hitch knot, but right next to it, right through here. And that's somewhat going to, whoops, disappear once we pull all that slack through. Just like that. Let me zoom out so you can see the finished sidewall. finally, we have to take these two strands, pass them through the bottom of the pouch here. And again, I'll use the completed pouch to show you what I mean. They're going to come out essentially alongside, next to the Cobra knots, through here and through here. Probably making it sound a lot simpler than it is, but what I'm going to do is take my knotting tool and open up those gaps a little bit. Bring the fid up and through. And now I'll do the same thing over here. So open up that gap just a little bit. And then bring the fid through the opening I just made. And finally, I want these two strands to kind of crisscross. You might be tempted to just cut and melt them right where they are, but I'm worried about them not being very secure. They're as large and not super tight as these openings are. It's kind of a bit on the loose side. I'm worried about these gaps that they just came through, basically not grabbing on tight enough, if that makes any sense. So I found to fasten them permanently in place, I want them to crisscross like so, and then I'll cut and melt them where they are at the end. So we're going to pass those strands underneath the cow hitch knots. So we'll take this one, go underneath, whoops, underneath and through, like so. And then our other one goes the opposite direction this way. Underneath and through the cow hitch knot. And hopefully I don't jab myself with the fid. And there we go. Now I will actually take the fids off and we'll move on to the sidewall, but on the other side of the pouch, just mirrored to this one. Now before I ended that last segment, I forgot to mention that as it is now, these Cobra knots are going to be a bit on the floppy, loose side. And before we actually move on to the other sidewall, it might be good to actually put the tool back in the pouch again. So hold it tightly in place and use our knotting tool to actually pull some of the slack through. You can see how big, how loose that loop is just from the knotting tool passing through it. So now I'll move down to the next one on this side, pull the slack through it. You can see this one went back down. Now that's nice and tight. And this one's loose, so we'll go to the next one down on this side, pull the slack through, and just keep doing that. Just keep working your way down until nothing's loose anymore. Next one down, and you can see the loops keep getting bigger and bigger as I pull more and more slack out of them. Wow, I can just about fit my finger through there. That's how loose this was. Doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it can affect how well the pouch does or doesn't fit your tool. So it's good to take the time to do this. Almost to the bottom. Wow, You can see it's actually getting wide enough that the whole knotting tool can just about fit through it. Wow. Okay. We worked our way to the bottom. Should have thought to do this before I lock the strands in place here. Oh well. There we go. So everything's nice and tight. Now we're ready to move on to the other sidewall. Okay, so once again, we're going to tie a set of Cobra knots to make the sidewall. I have my other 6-foot section of ACU tied to the 2 lowermost cow hitch knots via, well, another cow hitch knot. And now we need to make this mirrored to this sidewall here. So again, I have the tool actually in the pouch to make sure everything's properly spaced, evenly tensioned. And again, our strand by the front of the pouch, that is this one, needs to come around and over. Oops, well that was sloppy. Around and over. Again, we'll make sure we're even with the top of the pouch. And our other strand goes behind everything, around this strand behind everything, and up through the loop. And now we need to make sure this first Cobra knot is even with the top of the pouch. So let's pull everything, whoops, pull everything tight. And yeah, that looks pretty good. That looks about even with our other sidewall over here. So now once again we're going to take this strand and pass through the outside of the cow hitch knot right here. Whoops. Just like so. And like we did on the other side, we'll just keep passing through the tops of the, or the outside, I should say, of the cow hitch knots in a sort of zigzag fashion until we run out of room at the bottom. I'll do it a little bit faster this time, just for the sake of time. Maybe I should move that knotting tool, that would be a good idea. Alright, whoops. Again, make sure this is tight, that everything keeps its shape well, everything's even and straight, but don't do it too tight either. To the point that the walls are actually caving, deforming. Try to keep everything as straight as you can, and that will keep the pouch from fitting the tool too tightly. Alright, and we can see the same zigzag pattern forming. And again, I will pick back up once I have reached the bottom and run out of room. So again, we see I've made the first layer, or first strand of our Cobra knot, just by zigzagging through the tops of the cow hitch knots to the bottom, down here. And now we're going to, again, just mirror what we did on the other side here. So we're going to go over 2 strands, 1, 2, pull that through, and then come back up through here. And again, I'll open that up a little bit with the fid to make coming back through from the other side easier. Whoops. And you can see this is going to get more and more tricky as you work your way further and further down, because now the other side wall we made before is in the way. So I might have to really edit this down for the sake of time. I'm the one who designed this pouch, and it takes even me a long time to do it right. So if it takes you an eternity and a half like it does for me, don't feel bad. Going over 2 strands, out through the back of the wall again. And once again, I will open that gap up from the front before coming back out through the back. This would probably be easier with a curved or kind of hook-shaped fid, but I don't have any of those on hand at the moment. So I'm just going to have to make do the best I can with regular straight fids. And it's working out pretty well so far. And once again, I will pick back up when I have reached the bottom, and we will finish the pouch. Okay, so once again we have run out of room at the bottom. I'm going to take the bottom strand and pass it over this strand and through the side of the cow hitch knot like we did on this side. Right through the cow hitch knot. Whoops. Push that through. Now the fid is going to come out this way. And then once again, this strand is more or less just going to disappear through this gap. Again, do not go, whoops, I did this on camera. You want to go through this gap here. Do not go through the cow hitch, not like we did with this one. Just go through right there. It's getting more and more tricky to do, but we shall prevail. Okay, there we have the nearly finished pouch. Once again, I'm going to use my knotting tool to pull out the slack through the tops of our Cobra knots, and then after that we can finally finish the pouch. Okay, now both side walls are finished. Cords from the side walls are crisscrossed through the cow hitch knots on the bottom of the pouch. The pouch itself is finished. You could just use it as is without the flashlight holster. It's sort of an optional feature. If you have a small enough flashlight that you're comfortable just carrying that in your pocket, then, well, stop right here. There's nothing else you need to do other than obviously cut and melt the cords where they are. So the next part of the video is going to be how to make the optional flashlight holster, if you're interested in knowing how to do that. Say you're not going to add the flashlight holster, you're just going to use the pouch as is. What I will do is I will dunk it in some steaming hot water to shrink it up some. The cord is not pre-shrunk, or that is, I don't pre-shrink the cord before making this one of these pouches. Reason being, I want it to shrink up, I want these knots to tighten up, and I want it to sort of conform to the shape of the multi-tool. So right after I dunk this in some steaming hot water, I'm going to take my Leatherman, put it in a plastic bag, like so. Right after I dunk the pouch in some steaming hot water, with the plastic bag around the Leatherman to protect the Leatherman from the water, obviously, so it doesn't rust or anything. The Leatherman will go inside the wet pouch, and I'll just let the whole thing dry overnight. Don't try to force it to dry with like a hair dryer or tossing it in the dryer with your laundry. Just let it air dry overnight with the bagged up tool inside of it, and that'll help it really grab on and securely hold the tool. But don't do that yet. Don't dunk it in hot water just yet. If you're planning to add the flashlight holster to it, save that step for last. And now, on to the flashlight holster. Right after we cut and melt these strands where they are, that is. Alright, now if you are going to continue on and add the flashlight holster to the side of your pouch, you're going to need two things. First, I have a piece of gutted cord in the same olive drab that the pouch is made out of. This is about maybe 10 feet long. That might be more than you actually need, but for the sake of the video, having more than enough will be better than not having enough. And then we will need a piece, we will need a piece of PVC pipe just a couple of feet long. 3/4 inch PVC pipe, which is the closest in diameter to my flashlight. So if you have a smaller flashlight, then obviously you'll want a smaller pipe or larger depending on the size of your flashlight. But for mine, for the ThruNite TN12, 3/4 inch piece, that is the inner diameter, seems to be perfect. The outer diameter is more like maybe 1.25 inches. We're not using that just yet. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Right now I have a pouch that I want to add the flashlight holster to. I have fids on both ends of my 10 or so feet of gutted cord. And then also notice I have the pouch, or I have the tool actually in the pouch to help it keep its shape while I'm doing this. If you do this without the tool in it, the pouches will want to sort of roll and twist and get all misshapen. So I find to help the pouch keep its shape while we're adding on the holster, it's good to actually leave the tool in there. So what I want to do is go through this Cobra knot here, across through to this one, like so. Whoops. Just like that. And now I only want there to be a few inches of slack here, so I'll pull out just a little bit more. And that's it. We're not going to pull out a bunch of slack on that side. We are now going to take our long end over here. We're going to loop this up and around and come back through this next set of knots here. Alright, so I have my fid on the other end. It's going to come back through here and here, just like so. Oops. There I go, snagging my cord on stuff. Alright, and we'll pull all of this through until we have a loop that's just a couple of inches in diameter, like so. And now we will go over to the next set of knots, whoops, and do the same thing. We're going to loop up, over and around, back through the knots, so that we will now have, whoops, 2 loops. And there we go. So let's do that one more time. We're going to keep doing this from here to here until we eventually have 7 loops and we run out of room over here. See, we now have 2. Let me go through that one more time to make a 3rd loop. And there we go. Just keep repeating that process until you have 7 of these loops. So I've got 4 more to go, and we'll pick up again there once I have 7. Okay, you can see I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 loops. Still just a little bit of slack on the left side, and several feet of slack on the right. Now what we are going to do is we are going to take our 3/4 inch piece of PVC pipe and pass it through those 7 loops. Make sure the pipe is straight in relation to the pouch. And now we are going to tighten up the loops around the pipe. So if I pull on this second one here, pull that tight. And now the first loop is tightly wrapped around the pipe. So now we'll go over to the 3rd loop, pull on that to make the second one tighter, and so on. Let's go over to the 4th loop to tighten the 3rd. And you can see as I go along I have more and more slack. The loops keep getting bigger and bigger. Just like so. And finally, our last loop, pull on that to tighten up the one previous to it. And now finally to tighten up this last one. Wow, look how big that is. That's a lot of slack. We're just going to take our cord that we'll eventually be weaving the holster with and pull on that. And now we have 7 nice tightly wrapped loops around our PVC pipe. And now it's time to actually start the basket weave pattern that will become the holster for our flashlight. Okay, so now I have my working end, my long end here on the right side. We are going to start this weave by going over this first loop, under the second one, then over, under, over, and so on. So let's go over this first one, and under the second. Pull all of that cord through, just like so. Let me zoom in on that so you can see. And we're just going to continue that pattern, under, over, and so on. So I will now go under this next loop. Whoops. And also wrap my gutted cord around the pipe. Yeah, don't do that. Okay. Alright, so now we went over, whoops, we went over this one, and now we'll go under this one. Being careful not to get my cord twisted as I do this. It's going to be a lot easier to twist with it gutted like this, so be careful about that. Alright, so you can see over, under, over, under, over, under, and now over, and now we're actually going to go past that one and wrap around it and come back going the other way underneath it. So I pull back a bunch of slack. Just like so. So now we're going to go over, under, over, the opposite direction that we came from at the beginning. Under, whoops, then over. Ooh, I'm trying to keep this on frame and I'm doing a terrible job. Okay, so under this one, over this one, and now under this one. And you can see that trying to get twisted. All right, under, and now over this one and under this one. Whoops. Still smacking the fids against the tripod. And there we go. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the pattern. We'll just keep going back and forth, alternating over and under until we wrap around the pipe and end up over here. Let me go over that one last time, at least with this loop here on the end. You can see now we went under this. So now to start the other direction, we'll want to go over this one and then under this one. Just like so. Then over, then under, then over, then under, then over, etc. Back and forth, left to right. And I will pick up again once I have run out of room on this side here. Just wrapping these alternating back and forth strands around the pipe, weaving between the loops. Okay, so as you can see, I have finished weaving the flashlight holster. And one thing I was doing is I was weaving back and forth, left and right. I was pulling these strands down this way, making sure there was no slack, making sure they're all fitting together just as closely as they possibly can, so I can pass as many of them as possible through the loops that we made earlier, until I have literally no more room to weave. It's as far down in there and densely packed in there as it can possibly go. So now all that is left to do is finish off our loose ends, and then we will be finally finished making this pouch. I actually want to leave this pipe on here until I've dunked the whole thing in some steaming hot water, given it time to dry out. But I want to at least slide this back so you can see what I'm doing here. I want to zoom in on this a little bit closer too. So we're going to start with our strand on the right. We're going to take that with our fid, and we're going to pass it around this strand one more time, and then come back underneath this strand here. So go around that outside strand and come out on the bottom like so. Pull all of that cord through as I continue to snag it on everything in sight. Just like that. And now I want to pull this strand through the top of the Cobra knot one last time, exiting out through the bottom, and we will be finished with this strand. Just like that. Now I'm going to slide my pipe the other way. Now we're going to finish off our other strand on the left. And we're just going to loop this up, over, and back again through this loop here. Very simple. Just pull that through till it's flush. It's nice and tight. And all we have to do is cut and melt these ends of our gutted cord where they are, and we are finally, and I cannot stress that word enough, finally finished. And we finally have our finished multi-tool pouch with optional flashlight holster. And as I said earlier, I'm going to dunk this in some steaming hot water now to make everything shrink up and tighten up just a little bit. And after doing that, I am again going to take the Leatherman, put it in a plastic bag to protect it from the water. And that goes in the pouch with the plastic bag on it, and just let it air dry overnight. Then after it's dried out, then obviously you'll be good to take the Leatherman out of the plastic bag and just carry it in the pouch itself. You can see now it fits kind of loosely, but my experience making these over the past couple of weeks has taught me anything. It'll tighten up, it'll grab onto the tool more securely with use. And again, I'm going to leave this piece of pipe on here until it dries, and then I will actually wear this on my belt and use it to carry around my Leatherman Wave and my ThruNite TN12 flashlight. I can already tell this is going to be a very, very long video. If you have made it all the way to the bitter end, give yourself a round of applause for having made it this far. Thank you for watching, and I hope this video was in some way helpful. And that is about all I have got to say about that. I'm going to go attempt to edit and upload this now. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.